Back in 1923, the death of a British lord kicked off a massive global sensation. Was it just a tragic accident? Or was it something else? Something ancient? A pharaoh's revenge? This is the story of the curse of Tutankhamun, and we're about to peel back the layers of a chilling legend to find the surprising truth. Death shall come on swift wings to whoever disturbs the peace of the pharaoh. That's the warning that was supposedly carved right at the entrance to the tomb. It's the phrase that started it all, really, this promise of doom for anyone who dared to go inside. But here's our first big twist. Was that inscription even there to begin with? We are going to find out. So the legend of the curse really begins with its very first alleged victim, Lord Carnarvon. He was the wealthy aristocrat who bankrolled the entire excavation. And his death, happening just a few months after the tomb was opened, seemed way too perfect to just be a coincidence. I mean, just look at how fast his health went downhill. It all started with something so small, a simple insect bite on his face. But you have to remember, this is a world before antibiotics. That tiny irritation got infected after he nicked at shaving, and it led to fatal blood poisoning. Within weeks, the man who paid for the whole discovery was dead. And this, right here, is where a tragic death just spirals into this huge supernatural legend. The media went absolutely wild, connecting all these bizarre events. The story was that at the exact moment Carnarvon died, all the lights across Cairo suddenly went out. And then, thousands of miles away back in England, his dog let out a howl and just dropped dead. It was the perfect storm of spooky events to create a legend that the whole world would grab onto. But before there was a curse, there was the discovery. And to really get what happened, we need to rewind a little bit, back to the incredible moment it all began, a moment that almost didn't even happen. You have to understand, for the archaeologist Howard Carter, the pressure was just immense. His sponsor, Lord Carnarvon, had already spent a fortune and was basically ready to pull the plug. This was it, the last dig, the final season. It was either find the tomb of this forgotten boy king or go home a failure. And then, on November 4th, 1922, they got their breakthrough. A worker found a single step, just hidden beneath the sand. That one step led to a whole staircase, which led to a sealed door. And right there on that door was the name they'd been hunting for years, Tutankhamun. They'd done it. They had found it. Carter made this tiny hole in the door, held up a candle, and just peered inside. Ancient air rushed out, making the flame flicker. When Carnarvon, waiting anxiously behind him, asked what he could see, Carter spoke these now famous words. What he saw was a treasure trove, completely untouched for over 3,000 years, including a solid gold coffin and that iconic golden death mask. But this incredible archaeological triumph, it soured, and it soured fast. After Lord Carnarvon's death, the media started connecting every single misfortune, every untimely death, right back to that tomb. Think about this number for a second, 22. Within just 6 years of opening the tomb, newspapers had connected 22 different deaths, either directly or indirectly, to the so-called curse of the pharaoh. The body count was climbing, and so was the public's fear. And the stories just got more and more dramatic. An American financier dies of a fever after he visits? Blame the curse. Carter's secretary dies, and his heartbroken father takes his own life? It had to be the curse. You see the pattern here? Every single death, no matter how flimsy the connection, was added to the list. And here it is. This was the proof that just sealed the deal for everybody. When they did the autopsy on the mummy, the doctors found a lesion on his cheek in the exact same spot as Lord Carnarvon's fatal insect bite. A 3,000-year-old king and a modern lord, marked in the same place. For so many people, that was just too eerie to be a coincidence. So with a growing body count and all these chilling coincidences, the evidence seems pretty overwhelming, right? But is there another side to this story? Because this is the part where, when you really start to examine the evidence with a critical eye, the entire legend of the curse just starts to crumble. Okay, so let's start with that terrifying inscription. The reality, it never existed. It was completely made up by journalists who were hounding the excavation team about a curse. The team never confirmed it was real, but they didn't deny it either. And that silence was all it took to create the most famous piece of the legend. And what about all those spooky coincidences? Well, Cairo back in the 1920s had a notoriously unreliable power grid, so blackouts were a really common thing. And as for Carnarvon's dog, well, once you factor in the time difference between Cairo and England, it turns out his pet actually died several hours after he did, not at the same instant. Scientifically, all these deaths are actually pretty easy to explain. Without antibiotics, a simple infection could absolutely kill you. Lord Carnarvon himself was already in poor health. That's why he was in Egypt's warmer climate in the first place. And there's even a theory that dangerous, toxic mold spores, sealed up for millennia, could have been released when the tomb was opened, affecting people with weaker immune systems. But maybe the most powerful argument against the curse is to just look at who survived, the very people who should have been its primary targets. If the curse was real, Howard Carter, the first man to enter the tomb, should have been victim number 1. Instead, he lived for another 16 years. Lord Carnarvon's own daughter, Lady Evelyn, who was right there with them, she lived to be 78. And the doctor who actually performed the autopsy on the mummy, he lived to be 87. And here it is, the final, data-driven nail in the coffin. A study in the British Medical Journal from 2002 compared the lifespans of those who entered the tomb with a control group. And the conclusion? There was absolutely no difference in their life expectancies. The curse, statistically speaking, had no effect whatsoever. So to really understand the true legacy here, you have to know a little something about Tutankhamun. He was a pretty minor pharaoh, and his successors actually tried to erase him from history, literally chiseling his name off of monuments. For 3,000 years, the world completely forgot him. And according to ancient Egyptian belief, to be forgotten, well, that was to be truly dead. So think about it this way. Far from being a curse, the legend that grew around his tomb is the very thing that made Tutankhamun the most famous pharaoh in history. Howard Carter's discovery didn't just unearth treasure, it resurrected a name. After 3,000 years of silence, the curse ensured the boy king achieved true Egyptian immortality. He would never be forgotten again. Now that is a legacy.